You are listening to the Grandest Tour by the Cycling Podcast, brought to you by iwoca. Flexible loans built for small businesses. iwoca.co.uk.
Today we are at the Giro d'Italia.
Where are we, Daniel?
We've kicked off already.
Yeah, we've started. That's it. We're underway. The Giro, the Grandest Tour is underway.
The Giro, I noticed, Rich, that the organisers are calling it the Giro della Ripartenza, the Giro of the
rebirth?
No,
restart?
it's not really the rebirth,
Restart.
because we talked about this notion of the Giro of the rebirth, which was what the 1946 Giro was dubbed, wasn't it, after the Second World War? But rather than rebirth, ripartenza is sort of setting off again on a journey.
It was 46, wasn't it?
It was
47 the Tour restarted.
Correct.
The Giro was 46. We covered all that in our Giro, of course. We're in the Piazza della Rivoluzione.
Of the revolution.
Yeah. We're having a beer. We've been watching the time trial today. And Palermo, I was surprised to realise, Daniel, you've not spent a lot of time here. In fact, I don't think you've even been here at all.
No, I think we skirted it a couple of years ago on the Giro, and we've been into Sicily. We've been on to Sicily several times in the last few years, haven't we? But never spent that much time in Palermo. Interesting place, quite a difficult...
So euphemistically, speaking euphemistically here.
Yes, in the sense that it doesn't really feel necessarily like a European city with its kind of energy. There's a sort of people live their lives kind of out on the street, don't they? In the sense that, our hotel is in the historical centre of Palermo, and there are a lot of people who sort of just pull up a chair outside their house or apartment and... they sit there with their friends, or they kind of improvise shops and small sort of businesses. There are people with just the shutters up who, improvise bike workshops, bike garages and fishmongers. And, very interesting. It's interesting, got very interesting history, Palermo. It was an emir for 120 years, governed by Muslims up until the... end of the 12th century when the Normans reconquered it, and still a lot of Arab influences in Sicilian dialect. And I noticed the road sign, Rich, where we're staying, it's also written in Arabic as well.
Yeah, it's got a sort of South American feel too, I think. Buenos Aires or somewhere like that. There's that. I mean, you were also dwelling a little bit on there's a scruffiness to it as well.
Very.
There's a big rubbish problem here. There's just piles and piles of rubbish, and it's depressing because it was a windy day today, as we'll get on to, and it was blowing everywhere, and you just think no one's going to pick that up.
No one's
going to pick that up, and no one's going to repair the roads, are they?
No, I mean, Palermo really is a demonstration of the sort of chronic problem that we've spoken about many times on the podcast the last few years of, the South. It's a truism in Italy, but it is the truth that the South has very much been neglected and forgotten by the powers in Rome and in the northern industrial cities. It's got a long way to go to sort of hoist itself up to the level of kind of prosperity of some of those cities, hasn't it? I mean, I was reading yesterday, Rich, when we were looking for a restaurant, I was reading about how easy it is to eat in Palermo late at night, after about 10 o'clock at night, and there were locals bemoaning the fact that it was more like Palermo was more like Bolzano right up in the north than other southern cities, i.e. it was difficult to eat late there, but anyone who's been to Bolzano would not easily confuse it with Palermo, I would say.
Ooh, he says, looking down his nose, literally. Well, listen, Daniel, this is our Stage 1 podcast from Giro d'Italia, but it's also Episode 1 from the Grandest Tour. 37, I think, straight consecutive episodes up until the end of the Vuelta. We'll be covering the races, the classics, the Giro, the Vuelta, in different ways, I guess. And and will be helped along the way by some audio diarists. That proved really successful at the Tour de France. I already get the impression on day one here at the Giro that access to riders is going to be a lot easier. We're going to hear from a few riders who we interviewed at the finish today, including Geraint, Thomas, Stephen Kreuzwick, Simon Yates. But let's kick off with a brief introduction to our diarists on this Giro d'Italia.
Hi, my name is Cesare Benedetti, but you can call me Caesar in English. I ride for Bora Hansgrohe, and this is my 5th Giro.
My name is Joe Dombrowski. I ride for UAE Team Emirates, and this is my 5th Giro d'Italia.
Hello everyone, my name is Jacopo Guarnieri, and I'm a rider of Groupama FDJ. So this is my 2nd Giro so far. First one was last year, so I'm pretty a new guy even though I'm Italian.
Hi everyone, it's James Knox here, riding for Defending Quickstep. Hopefully you still remember me. Obviously it's not my first time doing the podcast now. Yeah, ready for my 2nd Giro.
Ciao a tutti! I'm Nathan Haas, I ride for Team Cofidis, and this is my 4th Giro. I love cycling, I really love the Giro, but I don't really wish to talk about cycling for the next few weeks.
Hello everyone, my name is Rick Zabel and I ride for Israel Startup Nation. This is my 3rd Giro. I did the Giro as well in 2015 and 2016.
So those are our diarists, and we've got a man in a jersey already. We've got a rider in a jersey already, Rick Zabel.
What about Lionel? Is he doing a diary for us? Not Watford?
No, he's not. He's kicking back. You know, I said he's like Starship Enterprise in his office at the moment. He'll have all the screens up, watching all the races, slow-mos, watching that strange Superman crash today, and trying to figure out exactly what went wrong there. But yeah, well, a great start for Rick Zabel. We'll hear from him a little bit later about how he targeted the King of the Mountains jersey, which he managed to get today, which was really clever bit of riding actually, and he'll wear King of the Mountains jersey tomorrow. Normally we do a tale of the Tapa, don't we? It's a time trial though, so there's only really the result matters.
I'm very impressed. You've actually made some notes. It would be remiss of us, given that you've gone to such trouble to prepare this episode and research this episode. Well, I think you should give a summary, Richard, of what you've written down there.
I mean, I've written down some names and times, and I guess that it was a story of the wind today. The wind was at its most ferocious in the sort of middle part of the day, and Rohan Dennis had real problems controlling his bike, it seemed.
Not just any wind, lo scirocco. We learnt today, didn't we, all about lo scirocco, this wind that blows, and frequently, apparently in these parts, comes, I think, from the east mainly, and I think it did today, and apparently the locals say it tends to hang around for about 3 days, and particularly in these months, sort of autumn months and spring months, it blows quite hard and quite often.
Well, it certainly had an impact on the stage today. You know, there weren't maybe as many crashes as people expected. Victor Campenarts came a cropper on a corner. Miguel Angel Lopez, as I mentioned, had a very bizarre crash near the finish, which has taken him out the race, unfortunately. But it certainly affected Rohan Dennis, as I said. There was a trade-off, though. When it was at its most dangerous, it was also could have been at its fastest, because there was quite a significant portion of the course that was a tailwind, and some of the later finishers really lost a lot of time because they didn't have that benefit. Filippo Ganna, who got towards the end of the best of the conditions, we think, was not a surprising winner in 15:24, and he was 22 seconds up. I mean, there was, as with the World Championships, there was quite a margin between him and the rest. João Almeida, the Portuguese rider from De Koning Quickstep, who will become tomorrow the first Portuguese rider in 31 years to wear a jersey in a Grand Tour. Did you know that? Who was the last one, Daniel?
The last, how many years?
31 years.
Would it have been Agostinho?
I don't know. I don't know the answer.
31 years, and it would have been, so 1989. Cássio da Silva.
That's right, Daniel. Cássio da Silva wore the yellow jersey at the Tour de France, of course. He was a sort of dashing Portuguese rider.
And of course, the biggest race as far as Portuguese riders are concerned, the Volta a Portugal, is going on at the moment, isn't it?
It is, yes, indeed. So Almeida really confirming the promise that he's shown, but that was an exceptional ride from him. Michael Bjerg was was on the same time, 22 seconds. And the big winner of the GC riders, Geraint Thomas, was 4th at 23 seconds, with Tobias Foss at 31 seconds. And I'm just looking at the ages of those guys. Ganna, I think, is 24. Almeida is 22. Bjerg, 21. And Foss, 23. So some real young guns up there. Of the GC riders, Simon Yates got reasonable conditions. Again, he had to fight his bike in the wind, but he got the benefit of that strong tailwind as well. He finished 49 seconds down Ganna. Ben O'Connor of NTT at 1 minute. Vlasov at 1:20. Nibali at 1:29. Kruijswijk 1:44. And Fulsang 1:47. Micah. Well, Micah was. Are we counting him as a?
We are, because he was going for GC, and
he lost a lot of time.
He was very upset at the finish line because I believe he wanted to go out at a different time, and I think he got overruled by his team.
Right. Well, I mean, this is always a gamble, isn't it? Do you remember last year in Bologna, all the GC guys went out first. In fact, Tom Dumoulin was the first rider on the course, wasn't he? And Simon Yates kind of gambled and went late on there and lost out. Well, this time he went quite early and benefited, I think, a little bit. So
Micah lost 2 minutes, Rich.
Micah lost 2 minutes to Ganna. Already, Kruijswijk is 1:20 down on Geraint Thomas. Nibali is over a minute down. It's quite significant gaps.
I would say very significant. I mean, when the riders looked at this profile and when we looked at it, we would have assumed that it would have created fewer time gaps maybe than a typical prologue of 7 or 8 kilometres, just by virtue of the fact that it was downhill. We've seen downhill or time trials with big downhill sections before where the gaps have been really, really small. And what has actually happened? Well, we've got gaps equivalent to what you would see in a 20 or 30 kilometre time trial usually.
You are listening to the Grandest Tour by the Cycling Podcast, brought to you by iwoca, flexible loans built for small businesses. Join 50,000 customers taking on life's twists and turns and scaling new heights with iwoca. If you run a business, find out more at iwoca.co.uk, iwoca.co.uk.
Thank you very much indeed to iwoca, our title sponsor, backing us at. They started backing us in March, but this is the second Giro at which they're supporting us after supporting us at our Giro back in May. So we're very grateful indeed to iwoca. If you run a small business and would like to find out how iwoca can help you, go to iwoca.co.uk. There's lots of information there for small business owners. Daniel, you were saying before the break that the time gaps are really substantial and significant, and far more than we would have expected on a short and mainly downhill course. But the wind really it did have a big impact. But is that the only explanation for these gaps?
It's difficult to say, isn't it? I mean, I'm always a believer that if you go back through the annals of Grand Tours, I always think that prologues and short opening time trials tell you more than people maybe suspect at the time. I mean, even if you go back and look at, for example, the controversial Lance Armstrong's reign in the Tour de France, the tours where he struggled, or he wasn't quite as dominant, for example, 2003, you could already, I mean, this is after the fact, 2020 sort of hindsight, but you could see that there. So I think probably we did see some indicators of form today, but if anything, it's muddled and muddied by the influence of the wind.
I also wonder about some of the guys going later on being a bit spooked by what they'd seen, and ironically having more benign conditions. But it was, I thought, especially watching Rohan Dennis, it was quite, you could be making late decisions or having changes of heart about equipment, for example, based on what you saw. I mean, you spoke to Peter Sagan at the finish, and he was asked about equipment choices, and he said the rear disc Well, in fact, Daniel, you asked him a couple of tech questions, which was astonishing. You asked him about his wheel choice, his gear choice, and his top speed. I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Oh, yeah. The next question was going to be about his cyclo-computer.
Tire pressure. Anyway, what pressure were you running there, Peter? I was gobsmacked about that, but he said the rear disc wheel has no impact at all. It's just, you almost just drag it along. It's the front wheel that obviously is affected by the wind. I don't know. When I watched Rowan Dennis again, it was like he was a sail going down the road with this. Every time he passed an intersection and the wind was blowing up through these streets, he was being buffeted to the right, and it looked dangerous. And everything matters there. His shape, the bike shape, the shape of the tubes, the rear wheel. I would have thought, because the wind would go straight through a spoked wheel. And the front wheel, most obviously, but I'm not sure. People who know more about this stuff than I do said on Twitter that a rear disc wheel isn't going to be a problem in those conditions.
No, we learned a bit, didn't we, today about riding rear disc wheels in the wind. The assumption is always that it's going to make things more difficult, but we saw a lot of disc wheels on bikes. I think pretty much everyone had a rear disc wheel, and we also heard riders confirmed to us that it wasn't that much of a problem. Among them, Rich, was Simon Yates.
Look, I did what I can. It's really not the course that's good for me, so just tried to do what I could. It's tricky out there. There's a lot of wind. I think you obviously know that, but I think that's actually going to be more, more the challenge today is actually just the wind rather than actually how much power you can produce. So we'll see how the rest of the guys go.
Simon, was there much back and forth this morning about equipment, or was it pretty obvious what you had to go with?
Well, yes and no. A lot of guys I think have gone for the 60 chainring. If I'm pushing a 60 chainring at 100 RPM, then we're going really fast, and I'm probably not pedaling anyway at that point. So I really like to keep a lot of the same equipment all year, so I know the feeling of the bike. So I just stayed with what I'm used to.
And in our sort of naivety, we often see windy weather and disc wheels, and we think that's not a good combination. High-profile wheels like that. Is that a sort of misconception that you can't ride disc wheels in this weather?
Same thing as what I said before, really. If you don't want to risk it and you want to use a slower wheel, then be my guest. I think to be honest, the disc wheel is not the big problem. It's actually being in the skis is more the more dangerous part. You don't have that leverage of being on the hoods or the drops. You're really tight and squeezed, and I think that's really actually more a difference than the disc or the equipment that you use.
So Yates pretty happy. He'll be happier now, I think, than even then, because I think both he and Geraint Thomas probably didn't realise at the time how good their rides would be in relation to their kind of GC rivals.
No, Rich, and Yates. When you look at this Giro, and this Giro has the most time trialling of any of the Grand Tours this year, and it's almost been sort of pigeonholed or considered a Grand Tour for time trialists. And the worry for Yates and his camp has always been how they're going to get back the time that they lose to the likes of Geraint Thomas, maybe even riders like Nibali and Fulsang against the watch, and that really has gone out the window in a sense. He's already over a minute to the good against some of those riders, some of his rivals, and it's them that are going to have to recoup that time from him. So he's in a fantastic position. Even better, of course, Geraint Thomas. Should we hear from him?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy. I just felt a bit legless the last sort of 2K, so maybe just overdid it slightly today, but yeah, it was a good hit out. I think, a bit of a shock to the system. It felt like a bit of a prologue pursuit on the track, But I haven't seen many results, but pretty satisfied. It was super quick. I think I hit 94 kilometers an hour, so yeah, I've never been that fast in a TT. So yeah, I just gave it everything, and yeah, possibly just overdid it a little, so maybe I should have left my Garmin off again. But yeah, Rowan, the guys saw him on the TV and they said, he was a bit getting blown all over the place. Do I want to swap my front wheel for a C40? But I said sod it, go all in, and I'd rather just be gusty a bit down there and then benefit from the better wheel for the last 6k, and so yeah, I can be satisfied, I think.
Geraint, some of the time gaps are not small. Was it a time trial that actually told us a fair bit about people's form, do you think?
I don't know, it's a funny one, because sometimes you think something so fast and short like that, there won't be that big of gaps, but I think when you got to put out a lot of power, I think there can be quite big gaps, so I don't think you can read too much into it. I think it's, well, we'll have to see the gaps, but I think, well, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. There's a lot of hard days to come already. So,
and just on your sort of sensations, you feel as though you're exactly where you wanted to be at this point?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like I say, it's kind of that was real intense. It felt even more intense than the TT in Tirreno, because that comes after 8 days and it's slightly different. Whereas this was sort of like fresh, bam, and you're into it. So it definitely felt like a pursuit sort of effort. But yeah, happy.
It's our old friend Ciro. Ciro, we miss you at the Tour de France.
Listeners, I miss you too, but I don't really miss the Tour de France because, as a matter of fact, certainly there was the start in Nice near the sea and also other stages, but I prefer Sicily. It's not only for Italian proud, but it's not for a question of heart, but it's for a question that the color of the sea, also the
turquoise.
Taste. Yeah, yes, exactly. But I apologize for our French listeners, but I'm convinced that the Sea of Sicily is better than the Sea of French.
It's a Giro route you must like. We're going all the way up the east coast.
Yeah.
This must find favour with you, Ciro.
Yeah, I mean, as a matter of fact, I prefer the west coast, but the east coast is better than nothing. I'm happy with this parkour, and certainly also our Filippo Ganna should be happy because the first stage is a time trial, really suits him very well, and the fact that he takes the pink jersey after the first stage in Italy is certainly a big thing for the Italian cycling.
Well, Giro, you were just as we sit here, he's in the hot seat. He's looking very good for the win. Ganna, first pink jersey, Italian pink jersey on the first day since Marco Pinotti 9 years ago. You were saying
exactly. You have to consider that in this century, so starting from year 2000, only 4 Italians got the first pink jersey in the Giro. Was Petacchi in 2003.
How can we forget?
Yes, exactly. He beat Cipollini with the champion, with the world jersey. Then Savoldelli in 2006, Gasparotto in 2007, Pinotti 2011, and hopefully Ganna this year. So only 4 times. That means that it's something really historical. And as you can easily see, listeners, I'm really well prepared.
Well, I mean, they do love a local hero. I mean, they've got the Shark here, of course, in Sicily, but what about Ganna? What can you tell us about Filippo Ganna?
It's certainly one of the young Italian champion. This season has been really outstanding because he won before the lockdown for the 4th time the champion, the world, the rainbow jersey in the track, in the individual pursuit, and then the Italian title of the time trial, the world title of time trial, the time trial of Tirreno Adriatico, and so today we have to consider that he's only 24 years old. And also I heard from Bradley Wiggins, he said clearly that in the future Filippo could also really smash the world hour record. So it's something really great. You have to consider that our last Italian capable to arrive to the world hour record was Francesco Moser, so more than 25 years ago.
So we need now, Ciro. Ganna in the pink jersey today. Viviani wins a few stages, sprint stages.
and Nibali wins the Giro in Milan?
Well, so concerning Viviani and Nibali, so far are dreams. As for example, the start of my holidays next month. Ganna is really more concrete.
The Cycling Podcast is supported by Science in Sport. Science in Sport. Fueled by science.
Thank you very much to Science and Sport. Very grateful indeed to them for supporting the Cycling Podcast since the Giro in 2016. We're refueling now, aren't we, Daniel?
We are with with the wrong island, Rich. We're refueling with Sardinian beer, Ichnusa.
Sardinian beer. If you want 25% off all your Science and Sport products, not including Sardinian beer, go to scienceandsport.com and enter the code SISCP25. SISCP25. We're also being sponsored throughout the Grandest Tour by Zwift, who are sponsoring Kilometre Zero, and that will be 2 episodes a week on probably most likely Tuesdays and Thursdays most weeks, but on the rest days those weeks when there are rest days, and our audio diarists will feature in those episodes as well. I know Lionel's doing a Zwift ride tomorrow, cappuccino ride restarting, and Stephen Moon from Science and Sport said he's going along with the energy gels, so I'm sure that will go well. And if you want to sign up for the cappuccino ride, check out Lionel's social media or our social media at The Cycling Podcast, or sign up for the newsletter at thecyclingpodcast.com. We heard from Geraint Thomas, and then we heard from Ciro Scognamiglio. And we'll hopefully hear from him quite a lot this Giro as well.
So Giro, today we were together in the small area that they've created behind the finish line for journalists, and we saw Superman crash live. And I said to Ciro, because also, shortly thereafter, Fuglsang has, I think, started his time trial and wasn't going well. So, a matter of minutes after Superman had crashed, I said, Ciro, you'll have to call, we call him Hai Capito. It's Beppe Martinelli is the director sportive of Astana. I think he's the most successful director sportive in Giro history. Won numerous Giri with Pantani, Garzelli. We call him Hai Capito because he's got this strange tick when he speaks. At the end of every sentence, he says, Hai Capito, did you understand? And of course, so he's become Hai Capito. Anyway, I said, you need to call Hai Capito tonight. And he said, no, I'll call him now. This was 3 minutes approximately after Superman had crashed. And then poor old Hai Capito Martinelli, he picked up and he told Ciro that he was on the way, Superman was on the way to the hospital. And he had possibly broken bones and then was going to be out of the race.
Poor old Superman. I mean, he had a shocker at the time trial in the Tour de France just 2 weeks ago, and with less terrible consequences, of course. He just lost the podium place there, but he was near the finish today, and it was a completely bizarre, random, accidental accident.
It was the road surface,
It was the road surface. He was taking his hands off the tri-bars, and his weight was maybe shifting. He wasn't holding the front of the bike properly when he went over quite a big bump, and his bike just went from underneath him and sort of catapulted him into the barriers. We didn't even see him. He went out of camera shot, but you could tell from the reaction of a lot of the people around that it was bad, because you saw people running to the scene and obviously going to help him. And what a terrible way to start and end your Giro d'Italia.
Not only that, but to end, we think, your Astana career, because we think that's the last time we'll see him in an Astana jersey. He's going to leave at the end of the year. His agent Giovanni Lombardi told me the other day that he is indeed leaving at the end of the season.
It was just a freak accident, wasn't it? But it did prompt or spark a little bit of a debate about time trial bikes and whether they're safe. We're not going to really go into that here, but
you mentioned him being in the aero bars, Rich. I learned today that those in the know, those who have ridden at the top level like yourself, that refer to it as being in the skis. That was the terminology that Simon Yates used.
Yeah, I've heard that. But it was, I mean, the road surface was certainly at fault, but the bikes as well play a part, because they're not as safe, they're not as stable as road bikes. But that argument will get shot down by those who love time trial bikes. Well, Lopez wasn't the only unlucky rider today. Luca Covilli of Bardiani finished outside the time limit. We think he crashed. He was well down at one of the time checks, and unfortunately he's out of the race as well. And Victor Campenarts, a time trial specialist, kind of just sums up NTT's season in a way. They've had just consistently bad luck, and a lot of their riders suffering crashes and injuries and so on. A sliver of light. Ben O'Connor, who's shown promise as a sort of Grand Tour rider, he was one of the... He didn't lose quite so much. He was only a minute down today in the time trial, so he's up on the likes of Vlasov, Nibali, Kruijswijk, Fulsang. But Kruijswijk is another of the GC riders who did lose a bit of time, and I suppose gambled by going late on. And I spoke to him at the finish. Here's what he said. I guess the starting time was important today. It was less dangerous later on, but maybe less fast as well.
Yeah, I was quite happy to see the weather forecast that the wind was little bit less in the afternoon, but in the end it turned out to be a disadvantage, of course. I noticed it already in my ride that I didn't get the speed that I had in the recon, and so there was not a good feeling, but yeah, in the end it is what it is. And you saw it also at the riders who started around the same time as me. They also lost quite a lot of time, and yeah, it was Thomas took the advantage straight from the start.
How was your shoulder? I think this is your first race back, is it?
Yeah, that was quite okay. It's now 100%, and it's not the ideal position to sit in now, but yeah, for 15 minutes it's okay, and I think for the rest of the race it won't bother me. And yeah, the only thing that's bothering me now is the 1 minute 30, what it is on Thomas, and yeah, we have to wait and see where we can make it up. But luckily we got some time.
Stephen, how close are you now to the form you wanted to go into the tour with, would you say?
It's hard to say with such a ride as today. Of course, you were always hoping for better, but I don't know if today, after today, I cannot tell you how I'm feeling. So hopefully on Monday and tomorrow I have to be sharp as well, and I have to see and wait and see how my form is. But yeah, I did my work the last few weeks, and I'm confident it will come this Giro.
Stephen, I guess you watched the Tour de France very closely as well. How did you feel watching such a strong team performance, and then obviously the time trial at the end?
Yeah, it was great to see the team performing like this and so strong as a team, and really working for that one goal and winning the Tour. But yeah, I was really feeling sorry for the guys in the last day, of course, and it's a pity it ended like this. But yeah, for sure we will come back, and but we showed as a team that we can go for the win.
So that was Steven Kruijswijk. The last time we saw him, of course, was at the Critérium du Dauphiné, where he crashed and dislocated his shoulder, which put him out of the Tour de France. And he's here and seemed to be kind of quite realistic about his prospects. Not really all that buoyant, I didn't feel. It doesn't feel like he's got back to the level he was maybe at. Daniel, I mentioned earlier that Rick Zabel, one of our diarists, is in the King of the Mountains jersey, a surprise. And he beat Peter Sagan, who was second up there, and he'd obviously targeted that climb as well. It was a minute and a half into the stage. The climb just started more or less straight out the start house. So here's what Rick Zabel had to say about his strategy in the time trial and his successful attempt to get the King of the Mountains jersey.
Yes, what a nice start to the Giro d'Italia. Very happy to have the climbers jersey after stage one. When I looked at the parcours yesterday and I saw there's a GPM after 1 kilometer, I thought, okay, normally on time trial days I have nothing to win, so if I go for it, at least I have a goal, and because if I try it and I win the jersey, it would be perfect, and if not, at least I tried. So I'm very happy it worked out. First jersey for me in a Grand Tour, and then it's of course it's funny to have the climbers jersey as a sprinter normally. And yeah, since I had this goal yesterday, I planned it very well with the team. Greg Henderson, my coach, gave me a warm-up, which normally track riders use for the individual pursuit, and because it was in the end it was an effort about 1.5 minutes. And you needed to be warmed up, but still kind of fresh and ready from the gun. And then I talked with Alex Dowsett about aerodynamics, what to wear, also which bike I should use. And I decided to start with my road bike with a 60 wheel in front and a disc wheel in the back. And I think it was a good decision. I was the only one, I think, who used the road bike. Then after 1.5 kilometer, I changed my bike to a time trial bike, and I suffered to the finish because after this effort in the beginning, I was really, really tired. And but I think it was the right decision to go with the road bike. And it was, of course, it's special to beat someone like Sagan and have the mountain jersey now after stage 1. I think it will be hard to keep it for tomorrow, but it's nice to have it at least for one day, and let's see what happens tomorrow.
Well, Daniel, we're in Palermo. We arrived yesterday. It was easier for you because you were already in Italy. For me, coming from France, it was pretty complicated, and I think you had about a 3-hour wait for me in the airport.
I did.
Various sort of COVID checks and procedures to go through. How do you feel? You've been in Italy for a while now. Italy doesn't seem to have as much of a sense of crisis around COVID at the moment, and I think at the airport I certainly had this sense of them being very strict about who's coming into the country and whether or not they're healthy.
Yeah, I think so, Rich. And as regards the race, I mean, I was speaking to a few people from the organisation today. They're pretty hopeful now the race is going to get all the way to Milan unless things deteriorate rapidly. There have been some warnings in the last few days from people in the Italian government, the health minister, whose surname, I think I said this a few months ago when the pandemic started. His name is Speranza, which means hope, which is a good omen. But he's talked about the need for the Italians to stay on their guard, and it's a delicate moment. The pandemic could kind of tip in a negative direction again. But pretty hopeful, I think. We were both struck by the fact that in Palermo we've done many Giri now, and it's varied the sort of attitude and the reception for the Giro in the host cities of the Grande Partenza. Sometimes you arrive in the airport and it's all decked out in pink, and the Giro is very clearly the biggest show in town. Yesterday at the airport, there was absolutely nothing, no trace of the Giro. Another big feature of the Giro in recent years has been what a good job they've done of preparing the host cities, and a lot of the shops are decked out with pink bunting, pink jerseys, cycling paraphernalia. Haven't seen any of that, to be honest, in Palermo at all.
Nothing, no sign at all that the Giro is here, and it feels, the Tour de France felt a kind of, in a way, a decaffeinated version of itself, but the Giro even more so. It feels very low key indeed.
And as a place to start the Giro, Palermo in Sicily, well, it's an interesting one because the Tour of Sicily, the Giro di Sicilia, actually predates the Giro d'Italia. The first edition of the Giro di Sicilia took place before the first edition of the Giro d'Italia. But the south of Italy, as we've spoken about many times before in the podcast, has not produced that many major riders traditionally, and particularly in the last 20 or 30 years. Any good riders that have come out of Sicily have had to move north, often to Tuscany, which was the case with Vincenzo Nibali, and they've sort of grown up as cyclists in the north of Italy or the centre of Italy. One rider who did grow up in Palermo, wasn't born here but grew up here, was Giovanni Visconti. So he was a sort of local hero today. But the crowds were reasonable. I think probably some people would have watched it and been alarmed, as usual, as is becoming commonplace, by not the lack of mask wearing, but it's kind of sporadic at times, isn't it? That you see some people.
Certainly around the city, yeah, it's very sporadic. It feels life feels very normal here. Everything's open, shops, restaurants, and people seem to be going about their business in a pretty normal way.
Just in terms of media presence, Rich, I think there are I was told today, there are usually about 300 of us at this point in the race, and there are about 60.
Yeah. But Ganna, Filippo Ganna, as Giro said earlier, will have given the race a great start from an Italian point of view, and imagine that will give it a bit of a jump start in the media.
I think it will, Rich.
First Italian in 9 years, as Giro said, to wear the pink jersey on the opening day. The last one being
the last Italian to ride.
I mean, Giro's already told us.
Sorry. Oh, okay.
Marco Pinotti.
No, I think it will mean the Giro, as far as the Italian public is concerned, hits the ground running, Rich. I think in our Giro episodes earlier in the year, when we did our episode on the 1990 Giro and Gianni Bugno, who of course held the pink jersey from the day one to the end in Milan, we spoke to one of his teammates back then, who was Stefano Zanato, who talked about this phenomenon of how the whole Giro in Italy, in terms of its media presence and its impact, is amplified when an Italian takes the pink jersey immediately. And Ganna is, he's a guy who's had most of his success thus far on the track, but he's a charismatic kid. He's very likeable. He speaks very well, and he's obviously not going to win the Giro d'Italia. But he's a new name. Italy desperately needs new names for the sort of the general public to engage with beyond Nibali.
And he, as we said after his World Time Trial title, I mean, again today he won it very easily. You know, I mean, and he looks different. He looks incredibly powerful on the bike. He's got a great position. He's the best in the world at that at the moment in time trialing, and to have a rider who's the best in the world at anything, any discipline, that will, I'm sure, fill Italians with a lot of pride.
He won by how many seconds, Rich?
He won by 22 seconds.
Well, according to Stefano Garzelli, former Giro winner, on Italian TV today, he would have won by even more had he been using disc brakes, because he had a bit of a wobble, didn't he?
Wow! Don't get the disc brake brigade onto us, as well as the time trial bike brigade.
He went very wide on one corner, and he did have a bit of a wobble. Yeah,
Daniel, you're really focusing on the tech.
Tech obsessed now.
Yeah. Well, listen, the other big talking point, we can't leave this podcast without mentioning the EF kit. Well, here's what one of our diarists, James Knox of the Koenig Quickstep, made of it when he saw it at the team presentation the other night.
Other things that need to be addressed, obviously, is the big scandal of EF turning up into their Palace clothing at the presentation, which I've got to say I think was a bit lost on me. I was a bit bemused. It was quite funny. Like amusingly bad, but yeah, it's not very nice, is it? I think most people would agree that it looks pretty awful. Is that the point? I'm not sure. It's a bit. I feel like it's gone over my head. This, a lot of people getting excited about it, but I'm not sure what they're getting excited about. But yeah, it's quite interesting anyway. At least I guess the team's happy with the media attention anyway. I guess that was the main priority. So yeah.
So that's James Knox. Didn't sound overly impressed. It's a collaboration between Rafa and Palace, I believe, is the name of the brand. Obviously, you're always decked out in Palace, Daniel, when you're out on your skateboard. But you're familiar with this brand. I was okay
with Palace, yeah.
What can you tell us about them?
I'm not going to say any more. Anyway, Rich, we were going to talk.
What do you think? Okay, just one quick take on the EF kit.
I think cycling has a long and rich tradition of gaudy and visually offensive jerseys, and it continues that. And I think that's great.
Well, it's mission accomplished, isn't it? It's got people talking. It's got them noticed.
I asked Gianni Savio about it today, and he said there aren't enough sponsors on there.
Oh, that's the one failing. Well, that was James Knox on the EF kit. He actually crashed today on the last corner. Only found that out when he sent in his audio diary from the stage, which we'll hear in an episode of Kilometre Zero next week. But yeah, hopefully he's not too badly hurt. But he came off quite a speed, I think. So yeah, he seemed quite chipper about it. But I'm sure he'll be hurting tonight. Well, tomorrow, Daniel, what's going to happen?
well, Rich, we're
off to Agrigento.
We're heading across the centre of Sicily, and we've referenced it a few times already in this episode. But our Giro, which we did, our sort of mock Giro early in the year, it's going to be a very useful reference point, because this, of course, was our Mafia episode, because we're sort of traversing. Well, we're not quite going through Corleone. Our fictional route did in the spring, but we're not quite going through there, but passing very close to there. So these are the sort of the badlands of rural middle Sicily. But as far as the stage is concerned, it's an identical stage finish to the one in 2008, which was won by... It was also stage 2. It was won by...
Riccardo Rico.
Oh, majestic, magnificent. It was won by Rico, the Cobra, the erstwhile Cobra. And it's just interesting. I mean, the first thing that strikes me about the results from that day, first 5 were Italian. Top 5. Rico, Di Luca, Rebellin, Pellizzotti and Savoldelli.
What a motley crew.
And all sort of punchers. It was what the Italians call scatisti. So, climbers who can sprint or sprinters who can climb. And, looking at the current peloton in the Giro,
I put it to our media at the finish, Daniel, that it's a stage that might fancy him. I think he's a bit too far back on GC to take the pink jersey that way, possibly, but unless Ganna is dropped, of course. But I'm not sure that'll happen. But it could be one that favours him. But also we've got riders like Arnaud Démare saying that they might be up for it. Peter Sagan certainly, I think, is up for it. Michael Matthews, I'm sure, will fancy it.
I mean, it could. The possible winners range from the likes of Sagan to Simon Yates, I would say. I mean, if you were to base your prediction on that 2008 finish, you would be looking more at Simon Yates, and you would also be looking at some not insignificant time gaps. I mean, Vincenzo Nibali, for example, he was in the top 10 in 2008 on that particular stage.
Very young, Vincenzo
Very
Nibali.
young, but still lost 8 seconds. So there were already, they kind of came in dribs and drabs back then. So, lots of names to conjure with, but there aren't quite, we've talked about this before in the past 2 or 3 years. At the Giro, there used to be this glut of riders who fitted that description, the Scatisti, the Bettinis, the Ricos, the Di Lucas, and we haven't quite got the same, well, certainly not the same number of them. I mean, Brambilla is a name I would throw in there. Molano from UAE is a sort of sprinter who goes well uphill. A tough one to call. I mean,
it could be that. I think now the difference in the sport now is that riders like Sagan and Démare, who can get up climbs, if their teams, and Michael Matthews, in fact, if their teams decide to keep it together, they could do that.
Battaglin, I would say Battaglin might be the favourite for tomorrow's stage.
Oh, really? Wow, interesting. Well, there we go. Lots of names to conjure with. Any we've left out. We've mentioned just about everybody there. Cover all bases. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens, will we?
Vendrame.
Oh, God, he's still going. Okay, Daniel. Well, let's go and have dinner here in Palermo. It's starting to rain, actually. So we better cover up our recording equipment and go and have dinner.
We shall. What did we have last night? Very quickly before we went, we had a very salty pasta alla norma.
Yeah, it was disappointing.
Pasta alla norma, one of the famous dishes from Sicily.
The antipasti was very good, wasn't it? But the
pasta alla norma, it's pasta with a tomato sauce with aubergines and ricotta, but ricotta salata.
You must be hungry because you didn't have any lunch.
Right, I generally don't have lunch. Ricotta salata, so it's a salted ricotta, but it was a bit too salty. But I was quite touched by the reaction of the waiter in the restaurant. This was a big crisis.
Yeah.
The cook, the chef came out, and the waiter came out, and they sort of head in hands. Oh no, we can't believe that our salted ricotta was salty. So hopefully we'll move on to slightly better things.
I had a pizza for lunch, Daniel, and there was actually a Hawaiian pizza on the menu. It was one of the specialities.
Are you serious?
I'm serious, 100%. Yeah, pineapple and ham.
Sooner we get back to that mainland, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Until tomorrow, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.